Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Monday, March 25th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to discuss the Apple TV Plus news and everything coming out of Apple's big keynote event that happened this morning. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
And writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
Okay, so our regular Monday water cooler is pushed back to Tuesday, barring any, huge Marvel or Star Wars news. So look forward to that tomorrow. But we need to talk about this Apple keynote event that happened this morning. We have a bunch of articles on the site about it. You can see photos from all the shows they showcased. You can see the trailers we're going to talk about. So head on over to the links in the show notes to check out those. But let's start in the beginning. Chris, what was announced today?
They have a credit card, I guess you mean the shows, not just everything that was announced. They announced Steven Spielberg came out on stage. He talked about rebooting Amazing Stories, and he showed like a snippet of a clip of a pilot.
Okay. No, but what was announced about the service? Like, does the service have a name? Do we know how much it's going to cost?
Well,
we know?
Certainly don't know how much it's going to cost. That remains a top secret, I guess. But it's officially called Apple TV Plus. So it's like Apple TV, but with a plus sign at the end.
So they're basically stealing Disney Plus.
Yeah, but they got there first officially. So now it's going to look like Disney ripped them off. See?
Wait, are they getting there first?
Well, they made the announcement first today on this big keynote speech. Disney hasn't done anything like that yet. Oh, I guess actually they did a few weeks ago. Never mind.
They revealed their logo. So I guess let's start at the beginning here. What does everybody think of this naming of Apple TV Plus? To me, this sounds like something I don't need. Because it's extra, it's something. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit extra from Apple TV. I think I'll be fine with extra Apple TV. I don't need Apple TV Plus.
Oh, today was certainly something extra for Apple TV. All right.
Man, Peter, this name is just like the entire presentation today, with the exception of the Apple credit card, which I'm actually kind of excited about, which is Apple pretending to be the first ones is something that people have been there long before. Even their video game announcement of Apple Arcade is just an echo of what Microsoft and Google have already announced in the weeks and months before them. And that extends very much to the Apple TV Plus presentation.
I don't know. I don't want to make this about video games, Jacob, but I think Apple owns so much of the mobile gaming market, and if they can convert those people that are, paying for those mobile games into subscribers that are playing on their phone, on their commute and stuff like that, I feel like that has a much bigger chance of getting a huge subscriber base than, Microsoft on a console.
I agree to the extent that, yes, with mobile games, but they were showing off games from bona fide console developers and showing off titles that have already been announced for other consoles. Yeah. So they clearly want to enter that space as well. And that's not going to go well for them because people who want to play those kind of games want to play them through a more established service. But movies and TV. What about that, Peter?
Okay, yeah, let's talk about movies and TV. It's weird because if you were announcing a new TV streaming service, you'd think you'd show us some trailers showcasing the footage of these shows and showing people what they're in store for, why they would want to spend blank amount of dollars every month, because we don't even know that, for this service. And we really got none of that. I mean, we got a sizzle reel, but mostly this presentation it was focused on the storytellers. I guess Apple believes that people are going to sign on for this service based on the big actor names, the big filmmaker names that they have on board here. What do you guys think of that?
Chris wrote an article about this exact thing for the site, so I think Chris should spearhead this. What do you think? Is this enough, Chris?
I really don't know. It seems like that is literally all they're doing to sell this, at least at this time. They're talking up the fact that they've attracted the best of the best. I mean, at one point they literally just put up a wall of names, and they're all very impressive names. And the first person they had come out to talk about the service, other than Apple people, is Steven Spielberg. And you don't really get much bigger than that. And I love Steven Spielberg. I'm interested when he's involved with stuff, but you got to give me personally more to go on than just being like Steven Spielberg's involved with this.
But also Spielberg's been involved with a lot of shitty TV.
Right. So that really doesn't say that much. And a part of me thinks they jumped the gun because, they told us this won't be ready till fall. And I feel like they were just like, we got to get something out there. And they just weren't ready for it yet. They just had people come out on stage and do really unfunny banter for a half hour, and that was really it. And that's really not enough. And I said this in the Slack that if I worked at Netflix or I worked at Amazon Prime, I would be feeling fine right now. For weeks, this was talked up as literally going to be Apple's Netflix killer. This is what they wanted to do. They wanted to blow Netflix out of the water, and nothing they showed here hints at that.
HT, you're on the news grind day in and day out, and we always joke about how every other day they announce a new unseen Apple show, and every other day we wonder what's going to happen next. So as somebody who I believe has probably written up a half dozen or more announcements about Apple shows, what was in your mind going into this, and what was in your mind when it rolled and it was all over?
I just wanted to see the footage. And my interest did actually peak once they showed that sizzle reel, because there was some phenomenal, really high budget looking shots and footage that we saw in there. But it was so short and it took so long to get there. It took several people talking about their shows and making unfunny jokes, like Chris said. And then Sarah Bareilles doing a performance of the theme song for her show, Little Voice. And that was the stuff that kind of stuck around more than the sizzle reel, unfortunately, which does look great. I wish that was the centerpiece, or that was longer or something, because they could have led with it instead.
Yeah, it looks expensive, right, Peter? It does not look like a made for TV production. It looks like it has a high J.J. Abrams or Spielberg levels of gloss to it, right?
No, I was going to say the same thing. It looks like they spent some serious money here. It looks like these shows look a lot more cinematic than what we're seeing from Amazon, what we're seeing from CBS. We've yet to see anything really from Disney yet, but I'm sure that I'm guessing Disney's going to be on the caliber of this kind of stuff. Chris, do you have any thoughts about the sizzle reel?
I mean, yeah, just to mirror what everyone else said, it looks great visually. It looks very cinematic. One of my biggest complaints of Amazon's original stuff is a lot of it looks really quote unquote TV-ish. It's very, it's blocked the way a TV show is, and the quality of the cinematography is kind of low grade and cheap looking. Everything we saw here, albeit briefly, looks very cinematic. It looks like they really went all out to make this look great. But again, I don't know if that's really enough to get the average viewer excited.
Now, they highlighted 6 different productions in the main segment of this presentation. One was the morning show. Brad, I think you're probably the one most looking forward to this show.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle with all of this stuff, just because like we're saying, they're not really showing a lot so far. And while the footage looks very pretty, we really have no indication of the quality or much detail when it comes to the actual stories here. We got some of it today, and if there's one that sounds, I don't know, I guess the most promising to me, it's probably Kumail Nanjiani's series. But some of that is also just because Kumail is so personable and funny himself that he had probably the best presentation out of everybody there. Yeah.
And you're talking about his show is Little America. This is an anthology series, each episode showing immigrants doing everyday life stuff in America. And I don't think he's in it, right? He's just producing it?
I think so.
Him and his wife, Emily V. Gordon, who wrote The Big Sick together.
Yeah, I suppose they always could pop up, maybe here in an episode or something like that. But yeah, it's pretty much their project as far as just executive producing. But yeah, like I said, the footage looks great. I wish that we were able to get more of a glimpse of these shows to get a better vibe of the tone that each of them will be going for. Like, I think for a while we had been thinking that the morning show that's being executive produced by Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon, and also has them and Steve Carell in it, was going to be more of a straight-up comedy. But a lot of the shots of that show in here painted this sort of dramatic vibe, almost like a Studio 60 set in the world of, morning news programs. So maybe we're not really getting the best representation of these shows so far, and our perspective of them isn't quite accurate.
Like, even the Kumail show, he mentioned that one of the episodes was based on this amazing true story of a kid who secretly ran a hotel after his parents were deported, and competing in a spelling bee to meet the first lady at the time. I like Kumail. I like the idea of the show, but that to me sounds like a TV movie. No? Like, am I like the only downer here? Like, I feel like a lot of these shows feel like they're being programmed by Apple, who is they're programming these series based on their kind of very liberal, very tech and education and whatever diversity focused views, and those are views that I agree with. But at the same time, a lot of these things feel kind of, on first glance, kind of like preachy and like they're coming from that point of view.
Yeah, I'd agree to an extent that this is very much an extension of the quote-unquote Apple brand. And Apple's always been, or at least liberal-facing company, at least how it presents itself. And all these shows, all feel like they come from a place of trying to continue that self-image. And like you said, Peter, these are all viewpoints I agree with. Little America, to me, sounds great. I love the idea of each episode being a different genre, exploring a different portion of an American life that I am unfamiliar with. But
are people out there that are, already complaining of what they're paying for Netflix, going to pay, another $10 or whatever a month to see, an anthology of immigrant stories? Like, that doesn't seem like
not. Of course not. I mean, Little America is the show. If it was on Netflix, Little America is what you watch and discover after you finish a new season of House of Cards, or whatever's big at that moment. It's the kind of programming you use to shore up your lineup to make sure that people stick around, and it's the kind of thing that gains buzz as it gets found. It does not feel like something you lead with. I mean, the only show in this lineup that feels like the big leading show is C, the new sci-fi series from that stars Jason Momoa in this distant future where all human beings have lost sight, and everybody has adjusted to this sort of tribal world where nobody has the ability to see anymore, which is a great concept. And Jason Momoa is now writing Aquaman as a huge star, but there was no trailer, like no proper trailer for that, and there was no the footage looked fine, but that has to be like the biggest, glossiest thing in their lineup. And even then, I'm like, okay, that sounds fine. What else? Everything on this list is what else?
You even have like J.J. Abrams. You're like, oh, a sci-fi show from No, it's
They didn't show any footage from it either.
But it's a funny romantic show, which I know he came from Felicity and like those kind of things. HT, like,
Felicity
are you excited?
Is good, Peter.
No, I've watched all of Felicity. I'm on the Felicity. I'm on the J.J. Abrams and Felicity train here. But HT, is there anything here that you're super excited about?
I was intrigued by the footage from C, like Jacob was saying. I think it actually looks quite good and a lot more like ambitious than I anticipated. I didn't really know much about it except for the stars and the concept, but it looks very Game of Thrones and high fantasy-esque, and that's something I think that's like the most ambitious of these Apple TV series and the one that looks the most cinematic. So I am intrigued by that, as well as Little America too. But yeah, everything else is kind of like we don't know enough or have seen enough of it. I think it helps see that it took a large portion of that sizzle reel, as well as Dickinson, which doesn't appear in like the presentations, but it also was like very prominent in the sizzle reel as well.
Yeah, they probably had a lot of footage from that because they've been filming it. Chris, is there anything here that you particularly were interested in?
Not really. I am interested in that Dickinson show just because I love the idea of it, and I liked the brief shots we got.
What is the idea of the Dickinson show for those?
It's basically it's like a comedy, but about Emily Dickinson, and just that idea alone makes me laugh. Just the thought, and based on the soundless footage we got, it looks like they're playing it like, even though it's set in the proper period, it's people acting like they're in modern times, kind of like the Favorite, which was one of my favorite movies of last year. So if it has a tone like that, I'm excited about it. But there's so little here to grasp onto. I really wish they had done a better job with that sizzle reel. Like I care more about the footage than I care about people talking about how great it's going to be. Like I need to see it. I don't need, it's show, don't tell. Don't stand up there and tell me how great it's going to be. Show me what's so great about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're in a Hollywood world where name value and star power doesn't mean much anymore. And I'm so shocked that Apple is relying on those names and that star power to try to sell this thing and not showing, wowing people with actual footage.
I have a question for Chris, because I think you and me are maybe the ones who maybe have an opinion on this, maybe Peter as well. Growing up, always thought Amazing Stories was the Twilight Zone for people who weren't cool. And so I have a really hard time getting truly excited for more Amazing Stories. But as a Spielberg fan, did Amazing Stories do anything for you? And does a new version sound good to you, especially with Jordan Peele doing a new Twilight Zone? I just can't get excited when I know there's more Twilight Zone, which is always the better genre anthology show to me.
Yeah, Amazing Stories was like the wholesome Twilight. It was Twilight Zone for the whole family. And I remember I watched Amazing Stories when I was a kid, but I don't think I could tell you like what any episodes I watched were. And even knowing Spielberg is still involved with this, it doesn't get me that excited. Like if he were directing every single episode, then I'd be like, all right, I'm all in. But he's not doing that. He's just he's putting his name on it, so it does very little for me.
Yeah, the original series was never something I was super excited about. What I did like that, Spielberg directed that original one, Ghost Train, and I think maybe some others as well. But there was also some interesting names that also directed. There was one directed by Joe Dante. There was a Martin Scorsese directed episode.
Brad
Bird. So I'm really I think Danny DeVito, Robert Zemeckis. So if he could get talent along those lines for this, Toby Hooper as well. Just looking this up, and I don't know if we know any names for this version of it, but I don't know. You're right. That's what this whole thing feels like to me, Jacob. Is this feels like the uncool Netflix?
I will admit I do think Helpsters actually sounds cool. The Sesame Street spinoff, where instead of teaching kids to read, it teaches them how to code. And as someone who grew up right before coding started being a thing kids were taught in school, and whose life has been affected in ways that actually have hurt me because I don't know anything about coding, the idea of an educational program where kids are learning those basics, via puppets, the same way I learned how to read, with the help of Sesame Street, I think it's a genuinely cool idea. I don't know if it catches on or not, but I think that's forward thinking in the right ways.
I mean, I think so. It's just, again, I think that's a show that none of us are going to watch. None of us have kids at this point. And I don't know. We should move on to the one more thing at the end of this presentation.
Well, one thing I do want to say about the program lineup so far is I feel like Apple is definitely behind when it comes to the streaming, subscription service, arena. Obviously, Netflix is at the top, and then Hulu and Amazon are still trailing behind them. So I feel like, if anything, maybe Apple just needs time, because even when Netflix started off on their own thing, they didn't have a lot of stuff that people were clamoring to see. They were putting out a lot of stuff that everyone was really whatever about, and they still do that.
Their first original programming was House of Cards, and everybody was into that, Brad.
That was right, but that was the one show. A lot of the other stuff they put out around that time was whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that Apple probably has to, they're going to try a lot of stuff that is star powered, that will appeal to a wide variety of demographics, and then there might not be one huge hit, but after some time they'll get in their groove and really figure out how to and have some stuff that people are really excited about. At least I hope, anyway.
I mean, I hope you're right. Okay, so at the end of this presentation, Tim Cook had one more thing. He showed this trailer that built up that there's something huge that's going to be part of this new streaming service, and that thing is Oprah. She came out and kind of talked how she's being part of this. She has 2 documentaries in the works and a book club where she's going to interview authors and talk about their books. Is this exciting? And is this kind of insulting to people like Spielberg that she's being built up, like she was center stage where everybody else was on the side of the stage, and like I don't know, she was built up as like the second coming. She's actually, they have not released the sizzle reel online officially at this point, the point that we're recording this, but they released the footage of Oprah. Like, is she that valuable still?
Yes, I'll tell you this much. My extended family can all tell you who Oprah is. Every single person in my life knows who Oprah is. I think people I know would struggle to name 5 Spielberg movies. People outside of the realm of TV and film fans know who Oprah is in a way that us who live in our bubble can't even comprehend. Spielberg's a bigger deal to us, but to millions more people, Oprah is the big deal out of this.
Still, like, even if it's documentaries about toxic workforces, like, that doesn't seem like what Oprah fans want to see from her.
I think it also has to do with the fact that she signed a deal with the Apple that encompasses several titles. So she's kind of their big get in a way, whereas Spielberg only has Amazing Stories with them. And to go off what Jacob said, Oprah is a lifestyle unto her own. I mean, she had a magazine named after her. So she, I think, does deserve all of that applause.
Yeah, no one would watch those docs on their own. But if Oprah says, watch my docs, her fans will watch those docs. People do what Oprah says.
But she launched the channel, and the channel didn't do well because it didn't have her on it. Like, I feel like...
But she hasn't... But now she'll be in billions of pockets, Peter. She'll be in everybody's pocket. Now people can't avoid Oprah.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Brad?
I was going to say, yeah, whenever Oprah talks about an issue, a whole lot more people start to listen.
Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that. I'm just curious if she's going to be enough to get people to pay, 10 or 12 or whatever dollars a month to watch, a couple documentaries in a book club. I don't know.
I mean, Oprah's book club, when she had her talk show, was huge and helped make a lot of books bestsellers. So, wouldn't be surprised.
But that was when she was on, network, or I guess, was it network television? I don't even know. But
I think it was network, yeah.
But so many people had access to her. Now it's going to be a lot less people.
I think you're really underestimating Oprah. Remember, she gave that speech, I forget what it was, some award show, and even though she didn't say anything about it, immediately everyone was like, Oprah's running for president. Like, people went insane, and it was like in the news cycle for like 48 hours. So I really do think anything she does is going to get that sort of attention. Will it be enough? I don't know, but it's definitely going to turn some heads.
I mean, I don't want to downplay who she is. I mean, I'm not saying that she's not important. She doesn't have a following, because she obviously does. I just feel like it would be better if she was like actually doing like a weekly interview on the network or on the streaming service, or doing something other than 2 documentaries. Like, I just don't think people are going to sign up for Oprah documentaries, but maybe I'm wrong. Let's talk about Spielberg versus Netflix. He's recently had that whole kind of war against Netflix, which I guess was maybe somewhat invented by the media, probably not, in my opinion. Chris, does this have anything to do with his deal with Apple?
I know everyone is sort of jumping to that, but we've known he's been involved with Apple since last year, so it's not exactly a secret. I do think it's slightly interesting that all those stories came out that he was very anti-Netflix, but recently it was revealed that maybe he didn't say that. But even if he did say it, I think what makes this different in his mind is this is technically being classified as TV. And I think the thing that really bothers him about Netflix is that their streaming stuff is considered to be films. They have TV too, but they also have original movies. And Apple, at least at this point, isn't doing original movies yet. They're just doing TV. So I could definitely see him making that distinction and being like, well, it's TV. It doesn't have to be on a big screen. But, in his mind, movies deserve, the biggest screen possible.
Yeah. M. Night Shyamalan was in that Storytellers trailer that we featured on the site. I'll link it in the show notes. But he wasn't at the presentation to, give his vision for his series that's going to be on here. That was a little bit of disappointment, I think, for you, Chris, right?
Yeah, I was hoping to at least get some sort of footage from that show because of everyone's, potential lineup. I do think I'm probably most interested in his just because I'm a fan of his. Although after Glass, I might have to downgrade him severely in my fandom. But I would be curious just to see something from that film, that show he's doing. But I guess we're gonna have to wait.
Season 1 of Wayward Pines is actually pretty good, and the Duffer Brothers were involved in that too, right? Did you ever see that, Chris?
No, I saw the ads and I was like, oh, this is just trying to be Twin Peaks, so I'm not going to watch it, and I never got around to it.
Okay. I'm a huge fan of Apple. I own most of their products minus, Apple Music and that Apple speaker thing. I have an Apple Watch in my hand. I'm broadcasting now from a MacBook Pro. Apple has infiltrated my life, and I'm usually a big rah guy when it comes to these keynotes, and they really usually excite me. But this presentation to me was kind of a flop, and I hope Disney, who's going to be doing a presentation like this next month, can take some lessons from this. Do you know what I mean? Like, what do you guys think? Was this a complete flop?
When the highlight of your entire presentation, more so than anything else, is a credit card, and that's all I want to text my wife about is the credit card and not any other TV shows, there's been a problem. There's been a big problem. Because, Peter, I want that credit card, but right now I wouldn't pay for Apple TV Plus.
Yeah. HT, would you pay for
it? Depends on what it costs.
Would you pay $10 a month?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. Yes, maybe. I have to see more. I was slightly underwhelmed by this presentation, so I really need a trailer or something to get me interested.
Brad, was this a flop, and will you pay for it?
The presentation was definitely not a rousing success. It felt like it was just like an open mic night where everyone was trying to do jokes and they were just falling flat. My subscription basically depends on the price. At this point, I feel like $10 would be my limit. But even then, I would be one of those subscriptions where like I see what content they have, and if after a month like I've just watched everything that I'm interested in, I would probably just cancel until something else comes along that that I want to see again.
Chris, you are the streaming guy on this podcast, so I'm assuming you're going to have to subscribe to this.
Oh, man, I don't know. I think it's going to be, if I ever want to review something from them, I'm going to email them and be like, please give me a screener, and that's about it. I'm not going to, based on this presentation at least, I'm definitely not jumping up and down to join yet another streaming service, at least based on what I saw here.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like they're making any major innovations outside of this. They did announce that you're going to be able to buy TV channels, but I guess that's something that Amazon Prime has been doing for a while now. You can subscribe to HBO, Stars, like stuff like that, and it's not a la carte the way I wanted it to be. I want to be able to buy, Bravo, USA Network. I want to be able to pick and choose every single network, and it seems like it's just like a dozen channels at this point. Jacob, did you see anything else that excited you out of this presentation?
The credit card, Peter. But I guess the first half of the presentation, before they got into Apple TV Plus, was all stuff that I liked. I mean, the thing about Apple, and they've been this way for years and years and years, is that when they don't innovate something, they still act like they've innovated it. So they announced a lot of things that are necessary, a lot of things that are very cool, and a lot of things that I feel like I can and will use. But nothing here is something that hasn't been developed or is in development by somebody else already. So I feel like, Apple TV Plus is, Netflix, but not as promising. Apple Arcade is, Google Stadia or the new Microsoft service program, but, they're the third to the bat at it. the Apple News stuff. I mean, there's so many other ways to read news already. It's all cool stuff, and it's also going to improve their ecosystem.
I'm actually surprised you're not excited for the News Plus, because then you could, access hundreds of magazines each month.
That was indeed very, very cool. I'm just the kind of person who I love reading articles on my phone. As much as I love owning physical books, magazines on my phone or my tablet are for me the ideal way to read those particular things. I'm just not so sure if I'm ready to pay $9.99 a month for it, because the stuff I tend to read tends to be stuff that I already have access to online. So we'll see. Like I said, it's all a lot of really cool stuff. It's just stuff that I can't feel like. I feel like Apple is no longer innovating. They're refining instead of innovating, and that's disappointing.
Yeah, it seems like under Steve Jobs, they were interested in making innovative technology, and now under Tim Cook, they're just interested in getting more money out of us in the services category. They want us to subscribe to all these things because they've seen how lucrative the App Store has been. I wish there was more of a plan, like, you know how Amazon Prime you get a bunch of things lumped in with that yearly fee. I feel like if Apple could give me my iCloud storage, my Apple Music, and my Apple TV Plus all within like a yearly price or a monthly price, I would be more game for it than paying $10 a month just for Apple TV Plus. But I don't know. Hey, does anybody else have any last words here?
It really bums me out to think that CBS All Access has more shows I'm thrilled about than Apple TV Plus.
That is sad. Okay, you can read more of all the stories we talked about on today's podcast on slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast, Slash Film Daily, posted every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please head on over to our iTunes page. Give us a 5-star rating, write us a couple sentences, tell your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you tomorrow.